My dad was my mom's love of her life and vice versa. And they were married for 22 years, and he died shortly after he retired. How are you getting me crying already?
I'm sorry. No, it's okay.
I just need a break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 14, watching her mother navigate life after suddenly losing her father taught Jill Hinton that leadership starts with heart. Now, as president of GoldOller, she leads from the front, pressure washing properties alongside her team and taking time to know every employee's story. Her belief that authentic relationships matter more than titles isn't just a philosophy. It's why her company has one of the highest retention rates in multifamily.
My dad passed away when I was 14, and I think that I grew up probably faster than I should have. I just kind of resumed responsibility and probably more granular than most kids my age. You know, I've always wanted to be the better version of myself. I've always wanted to continue to improve and continue to learn, because no one wants to be a know-it-all. I have to walk the walk. I feel and I felt the biggest part of my job is to be the person or employee that I expect my team to be.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A lot of pressure. It was tough.
Do you doubt yourself?
All the time. Yeah. For sure.
Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So where I want to start today is I am of the belief that from 0 to 6 or 6 to 12 are really the defining years of our lives, and that's where a lot of our personality is shaped. How would you describe kind of your early life and childhood, and how do you think that's influenced you today?
0 to 6 and 6 to 12. Okay. Wow. So the first 6 years of my life, well, first of all, I was born in Iceland.
Okay.
Yep, in Keflavik. We pretty much moved every 2 years as a military family, and that continued all the way until I was 12. So I was able to experience a lot of different countries, always on the go. You know, once I became a little bit older and started going to elementary school, obviously that was the shift of meeting new friends, starting all over, moving from different base housings, you know, one after the other. And I think that's really shaped me to be adaptable, affable, go with the flow, you know, meet new friends easily.
Yeah. So from what age and what age were you moving around?
So my dad retired when I was 12, and I was born in Iceland. So pretty much
My dad retired when I was 12 too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. Where did he retire at?
He was working in a tech company, and just I think decided that he wanted to like retire and do real estate full time. So yeah.
Cool.
But sorry, continue.
Yeah. So I think living the military life just created probably a little bit more safety than most families that are not living in the military, because you're in somewhat of a protected environment. You know, when we lived on the base, there was base housing, which was essentially just a circle. And then there was a street and there was another circle. And in the middle of each circle, there were playgrounds with, you know, trees and marbles. And it was the same thing over and over again. So it became just very consistent to me. And I feel like I was probably a little bit sheltered, you know, there was no malls or any of those things. There was just the Navy Exchange and the commissary.
So did you move every year?
Every 2 years, just about.
Every 2 years.
2.5 years. Mm-hmm.
So what is that process like then as a kid when you are like entering a city, establishing your friend group, and then having to like move 2 years later? Was that a good experience or a bad experience?
I don't remember it being a bad experience. My memories of that time in my life was that I was able to visit countries that I probably wouldn't have been able to see if we weren't in the military. We lived in Portugal for a couple of years, and I remember that vividly. I made really great friends, and for a time frame, we didn't actually live on base housing. We were waiting for base housing. So I lived on a dirt road with a stone wall, and we had a maid named Olga who cleaned our house or helped us around the house and did laundry on a stone outside in a basin.
Oh, wow.
And she did that for peanut butter. So it was just
What do you mean she did that for peanut butter?
her paychecks with peanut butter and American food that we would go to the commissary and buy for her. That just kind of highlighted the way of living over in that area. So we did that for about a year, and then we went to base housing. And I think I liked living on the dirt road a little better.
So you have 2 siblings?
I have one sibling.
You have one sibling, and your sibling older?
Older.
Boy or girl?
Boy.
What was your relationship like with your brother growing up?
So growing up, we have a 4-year difference between us. I think that he was my protector. I was the bossy one. I remember laying down on the living room floor and making him brush my hair with my Barbie brushes. And him really just kind of watching out for me, while we were on base housing. Once we became teenagers, the 4 years was a big difference, and he was driving and doing his things, and I was cheerleading, and I took dance for 14 years. So I was heavy into that.
When did you start dancing?
I think I was 5.
How did you get into that?
My mom just put me in dance class, and I did ballet, I did jazz. I ended up teaching a dance line when I was in high school. So I was just born with rhythm naturally.
Wow. And you enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it. Yes, I did.
Okay. Wow.
I still can do the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth position.
So your dad traveled a lot for them. And what about your mom? Did she work?
So my dad didn't travel a lot. We traveled with him. My dad he worked at NSA, and his job was very confidential, top secret. So we didn't really know much what he did. But we were pretty much the Beaver Cleaver family. My mom when I was younger, she stayed at home, dinner at 5. My dad came home, and, it was a beautiful life.
What was their relationship like growing up?
My parents?
Your parents, yeah. Were they?
Woo! So their story is my mom was from Montrose. It's on the North Sea side of Scotland, so the eastern side of Scotland. His ship pulled into her dock, the port in the basin, and they met each other up the high street. And they dated long distance for a couple of years. And, my dad was my mom's love of her life and vice versa. And she flew just to Japan and left her whole family to marry him by herself. And I think I'm getting choked up now because she was just really, really sick and has lived with me for the last few months. And I just have learned recently what a remarkable journey she had, because we talked a lot about it. So she left her whole family, her sister, her brother, her parents, everything that she had known, for her whole life when she was 24. She couldn't drive. She really was green to the American living, and she flew to Japan to meet my dad, and they got married in Japan, and that's where my brother was born. So she was so courageous with doing that, and doing it for love, really. And so she became a military wife, and they were married for 22 years, and he died shortly after he retired. How are you getting me crying already?
I'm sorry. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
You said your mom, you're living with her.
I just need a break. So my mom left her whole family, moved her whole life to marry my dad. And it was really difficult for her because, she was in a strange country with, essentially not knowing anybody, and by herself during the day because she wasn't working. And then she got pregnant with my brother, and I'm sure that was difficult. But, if you ask her today, those were her best years of her life. Living on base with my dad, he was really the love of her life.
what character traits do you feel like you have from your mom and your dad?
My mom and my dad, gosh. I think it's changed over the years, as I become a parent and start seeing my mom and myself, some of those things that used to annoy me are far less annoying because I'm doing it myself with my own children. My dad, I will say, is an organizer. He was a multitasker. Interestingly enough, my mom and my dad are both introverts, and my mom could be very shy. So I have no idea where my personality came from. My mom used to tell, well, I was there, but I don't remember it this vividly. But when we would move from house to house, when we were moving bases, every time we moved, everything had to be done that day. Curtains hung, boxes outside. My dad would make custom mailboxes instead of the regular base housing mailbox. He would, do like a wooden wishing well and plant flowers at the bottom and really take time to make our house feel like a home. I thought that was really special.
And your brother, is he similar to your parents in terms of being an introvert?
Yes.
So you are truly the only extrovert in your...
I think so. When my mom is around her people, friends and her church family, people that she feels comfortable with, then she's a hoot. She's cracking jokes, yucking it up, the Scottish accent's coming out. But if she's if she's with a group of people that she doesn't really know well, then she's a little shy and uncomfortable.
So I guess going back to the fact that you moved so much.
Yeah.
How did you have a lot of friends growing up?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
So you maintained friendships when you moved every 2 years?
So when I was younger, I was a baby in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that really, that wasn't something that I could do. But as I grew older, interestingly enough, we moved to one state twice. We went to Fort Meade, Maryland.
And this was what time period? How old were you?
I was in kindergarten, so I was like 5 or 6. And then my best friend across the street, Kim Smith, or Kim Williams, I think her name was. So we were best friends for 2 years. I would go to her church. She would come over to our church. We just lived on opposite ends of the court. We'd call it the court. And then we moved to Portugal. And 2 years later, we were stationed back in that same Fort Meade. And I was one court down, and she happened to be a court just across the street. So we ended up going to school together again. And I thought that was really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then in your teenage years, where were you? Where did you grow up? Where were you?
Florida.
In Florida, from what age to what age?
So my dad retired in 83. So I was 11-ish. And my mom still lives in that house. She has never sold that house, almost 40 years. It's the very first house that she built with my dad when he retired, and they saved their whole marriage for that house. And my husband and I lived right next door to her for about 12 years when my son was little.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're in Florida, and then you end up going to college in Florida as well.
Yes, I went to UCF.
You went to UCF, and you studied
criminal justice.
Criminal justice, and then you went from criminal justice to multifamily.
I don't know how that happened. I was set on being forensic, CSI, a detective. I really enjoyed all of the mystery solving shows, and I even thought at one point I wanted to be a police officer.
Why did you enjoy that? Why did you it's not common, I feel like, for somebody in high school to be like, I want to be in forensics and criminal.
I don't know. I just, I've always been curious, about things and trying to figure out the whys behind them. I mean, I've always been that way my whole life, and I still am today. And so I went to school for it. I graduated. While I was going to school, I was working at a restaurant. My days turned into nights, and I was like, okay, I've graduated now. I have to find a day job. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to move in the direction that I wanted to become this, forensic FBI person that I thought I was. So I decided to look into apartments. I had lived in an apartment or two, during college. And I always thought to myself, this would be so easy to do. I loved, the different floor plans. And back then they had mauve carpet and gray carpet. And, you get to pick what color. And if you pick this carpet color, you get that tile. And I don't know, something about it I was drawn to. I think it's a little bit of the design, in me. But I just took it. I took a stumble at it and I got an interview. And or was called in for an interview. And it's kind of funny because I was late to my interview. I am never late. I'm always very, very punctual. And I overslept, which I never do. And I rolled in there and I interviewed with a lady named Bobby Johnson. This was in 1994. And we sat and talked, and we talked about everything, the job, but then we kind of got on the topic of her daughter, and her daughter was getting married. So I don't know how we became so comfortable with one another, but she was showing me all of her daughter's wedding dress options. And she showed them to me, and I just gave her my honest opinion of what I thought of all of them. And so I got home, and within, a few hours, she called me and offered me the job and said that she was so impressed with my confidence and my ability to be transparent. So I was hired at $5 an hour working the weekends part-time.
So I, in preparing for this episode,
yes.
I talked to some people that you know.
Yes.
And a theme that was common amongst many of them was that
oh gosh,
you are the most confident person they've ever met.
Really?
And what I'm curious to know about is like, what first of all, what do you think of that? And then secondly, if you think that's true, or at least you believe that you are confident, which it sounds like even the interviewer thought, like, where do you think that comes from?
I think it's taken me a long time to get here. I can remember growing up, while I was outgoing and a cheerleader and, taking dance lessons and doing all the things, I was always a little bit uncomfortable with my height because I was typically the tallest person on the playground, all the time. So I think it was really until I got, graduated from high school and kind of stepped into the career, it stepped into, I don't know, a more professional platform in my life that I realized that it's okay to be tall and it's okay to wear high heels. And, through really good mentorship and watching people that I admire in the business do their thing, I think I just grew through the maturation process. But I didn't come in guns blazing.
Yeah. So you developed confidence over time.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I think is natural, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's similar. I mean, there is the rare breed of people I feel like who like are just unfoundedly confident. Like there's no reason that they should be confident yet, but they just have this like confidence. But I think for most people, you have to like build your confidence over time. And usually that's like seeing things that you were doing well and getting positive reinforcement and then realizing like, oh, I'm actually like pretty good at this, or, oh, I'm supposed to do this.
Right.
Were you always ambitious? Would you consider yourself an ambitious person?
Yes.
Were you always ambitious?
Yes.
You were? Mm-hmm. Why?
I think that, my dad passed away when I was 14, and I think that I grew up probably faster than I should have because it was my brother, my mom, and me, and I just kind of resumed responsibility and, probably thought things through probably more granular than most kids my age, wanting to stay close to my mom when I went to college. My brother, neither one of us have moved far away from my mom. So, I've always reached not to be, I've always wanted to be the better version of myself. I've always wanted to continue to improve and continue to learn because no one wants to be a know-it-all, And I always feel like when you're open to new ideas and leave the ego at the door, then it just really creates a nice recipe for you to grow and become more confident.
So when you were 14, and you lost your father, like what?
Yeah.
You mentioned you grew up faster than most. What does that like look like in terms of?
Just, I think worrying more than a normal person would be, worrying about my mom, making sure that she's okay, she's happy, because it was very suddenly. He died of a brain aneurysm. And it was tough. It was tough for all of us. So I think I just had to mature.
Yeah. So you fall into multifamily.
Yes. Yes.
From criminal psychology. What was your first job in multifamily?
This leasing consultant.
The leasing consultant.
I worked Saturday and Sunday, making $5 an hour. Oh. I did that for about 6 months, and then I
was that Capri or
that was with Capri.
Capri, yeah.
Yep, and I did that for about 6 months, and then the assistant manager. There were some fraud issues going on there, so I slid right into her position. And I think I did that for maybe 6 or 9 months, and I was managing that particular property, after a year. And that's when I was doing both. I was working at the restaurant and working, the part-time job. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. I valued what the company, their culture and what that was all about. I felt like I was a part of something. And that was really my first career job. And I just kind of thought through, 20, 22, 23 years old, I was probably making $35,000 a year. I thought I was the bee's knees back then. I was like, I have a career. I work Monday through Friday. And I thought it was great. A little bit of an adjustment with working with a team that they all were older than me. I remember my service manager was probably double my age and had been there for many, many, many years. And it was, here I come in, wanting to turn everything upside down and, do things my way. And that lasted for so long until I realized that we're not doing it my way. We have to do it the team's way. So
you had a lot of ideas coming in.
Yes. I always have lots of ideas.
You always have ideas?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you have ideas, do you what is your creative process like? Because for me, I feel like I'm similar to you. I always have a ton of ideas.
Right.
And it's a process where it's like I might be in the sauna or in the steam room or in the shower or driving, and it just I can't sit down and just ideate. What is your process like for creativity?
So I have ideas all the time as well, whether it's for my personal life or, to improve our operations of the company. And they'll start curating, and I'll start building upon them. And then, I take notes and I just kind of let them sit at my desk. And I always try to intertwine how those ideas can be incorporated to improve a process or, maybe something in our house or how I could help somebody in some way. And if it's, personal, I talk it through with my husband and, come up with a game plan. I'm very much, let's talk about it. Let's have a game plan. Let's get organized. And when it's with work, it's the same fashion, but just on a much bigger scale.
What is the process of going from a property manager to a president look like? And what makes somebody able to do that?
When you say that, it still makes me pause. Just because, I don't think I fully recognize that jump because I still do a lot of things, like myself, our company, we're not title centric. And we don't lead with titles. Everybody within GoldOller, myself, I would like to think I'm one part of the bigger picture. And, going from property manager to regional manager to VP of operations to president, they all have different responsibilities with different layers, on-site preparation to multiple site preparation to, okay, now we're bringing partners in, acquisitions. And at one point, I realized, and I think it was when I was promoted to vice president, that I'm really I have to walk the walk, and as much about processes and procedures and company financials, I feel and I felt the biggest part of my job is to be the person or employee that I expect my team to be. I think that is so important and so overlooked.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A lot of pressure, for sure, especially over the past couple of years. I am the epitome of a duck on water. From the top up, I'm cool, calm, and collected, and I'm paddling really, really hard underneath the water, just checking boxes. And not that it's so much pressure that I don't enjoy it, because I do. I love results. I love seeing really great things happen. And, I have a lot of pride in some of the accomplishments that we've created as a company. But the recipe for me is really to exude the leadership and the commitment and the loyalty and the honesty that I expect every team member to, kind of follow suit.
Do you doubt yourself?
All the time. Yeah. For sure. Sometimes I doubt myself. Am I pushing too hard? Sometimes I doubt myself. Should I push harder? There's that delicate dance between the carrot and the stick, and I think that the area that I try to shine the brightest is get people to want to work with you, not for you. Get your folks to work with you. If you're coming to the property and they know you're coming, everyone's going to show up early because they're proud. They want to get there. They want things sparkling. They can't wait to show you their accomplishments. It shouldn't be that they're scared you're coming and they're trying to, fix what was broken. I think it's important that we work together as a team with one another. And that pretty much means setting the tone. And, we've talked about this before. If I'm walking a property, I'm not walking by trash. If the phone is ringing next to me, I'm going to pick it up and talk to a resident. And that's genuinely how I feel. I think it's really important that we don't stop doing things because we are, climbing the ladder. As a matter of fact, I think we do more things.
We had dinner last night, and we talked about something that I thought was really interesting. You talked about hiring and kind of like what you learned about hiring and the first archetype that you would go after and how that's changed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So and by the way, it's changed multiple times. It just continues to change, and I have to be open enough to recognize the change. But typically, years ago, I was all about the resume and the bench and the pad and the company that the candidate had previously worked for and how many years experience have they had. And we were paying some top dollar salaries for these candidates because we felt like, they were bringing in a level of acumen that was unmatched. And recently, over the past couple of years, I have realized that, team members that have started in a role and have been promoted up and have worked under good leadership are the hustlers. They'll do anything, and they're excited, and they're following up, and they're giving you the answer before you have to ask. They're motivated. And there's been a series of these events that have happened recently, And I like it.
It's almost like how you probably were when you were a property manager.
Yeah, for sure. When I was with Capri, that was the first company I worked for. And I did all of those things. I was when a property was in distress, I would go there and fix the property and I would learn a new skill set. Or I've worked a student demographic and I would move to the other side of town, which is funny because when I was living in Orlando, I can remember this like it was yesterday. I had the opportunity to transfer to Metro West, which was literally a 30-minute drive. And I remember thinking to myself, that's so far away. It's like 30 miles. I don't know, I don't know if I should take this transfer, but I always looked at all of those opportunities as just that, an opportunity. And I learned something from every property that I managed because it was just a different level of clientele, different challenges. And I think that really helped me learn the value in rentals, where oftentimes, there was a period right before 2007 when the condo conversion happened. And, it was easy to rent. Everyone would come in. They would not shop comps. They would leave their deposit. Everyone was 96, 97, 98% occupied. And then it became really challenging. And I remember sitting there with my team and we had this conversation. And the theme was, today we're going to learn how to sell the value of this community. And I got everybody in a van and we went around together and shopped all the different properties to understand the differences and the deltas and the price points and really learned, we dared to compare ourselves to other people. And, my team became salesmen. And they sold value. They didn't sell how much the rental rate was or when, the first two questions you asked, when do you want to move in and how much do you want to pay? It was, hi, Shiv, welcome to the community, ask some questions, build the rapport. And I think that's important too. And it's even more relevant now than it ever has been.
I still keep thinking about the ambition thing. You talked about like the ambition. And sometimes when I think about and learning and always wanting to grow, one of my early mottos like in life, and I think something that's really influenced me is like very similar to what you said, which is like becoming the strongest version of yourself. And when I think about growth for me, why do I care about growth? I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think there's just like dopamine that's released when you're like getting better at something and improving. Mm-hmm. But I think the deeper thing for me is if I'm not growing, I feel like what's my worth?
Right.
Or what's my value, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I don't think it's a good thing. I think like it puts a lot of pressure on myself, and I think like I associate my self-worth to my achievements. How would you characterize like how you think about why you care about growth? Because there's a lot of people that don't, mm-hmm. and they're happy and they're fine.
I don't think that me being ambitious is necessarily professional growth or being the better version of myself professionally. Mm-hmm. I think it leans in a little bit more to really discovering my flaws and recognizing what those are and figuring out a way to improve them, because I think that everyone has flaws and they change, all the time of what that looks like and, where they are in their lives, because there's so many different challenges we face personally and professionally. And I think being a better version of myself and being ambitious is being sometimes maybe a better wife or, kinder or more giving, or really focusing on things that matter and not always saying yes just to please people, but to sometimes say no so you can prioritize what your priorities are in your life. So it's not necessarily being more ambitious and growing. I always like to learn, and I think that's important for me to feel inspired. I think in multifamily, every few years something new is happening. And I always want us to not be, stuck in a box I want us to be that circle with the round edges and push the boundaries sometimes as a company. And maybe it'll work and sometimes it won't work. But be courageous enough to try new things, and believe and trust in it.
When you think about who's inspired you, like who comes to mind?
Professionally,
personally, in general.
So, gosh, that's a long list. I think originally, back in the day, I had a regional manager named Suzanne Tanner, and she was I think she was the person that made me realize this is something that I really want to stick with versus I had this whole teeter-totter. Do I want to go after my career, or do I want, what I went to school for, or do I want to stay with this company? And I think that it was her that made me really want to stay. And there was a lot of influential people within CapREIT that taught me along the way. Personally, I would say earlier, my dad really inspired me because he was just, a military man, a great husband. I felt like the love story between my mom and dad was really unique and special. But most recently, I think that spending more time with my mom and seeing her, I see me through her now. And I just really respect who she is and, the life that she's lived and the challenges she faced.
What makes me kind of sad is that including myself, I know that as time goes on, I'm going to appreciate my parents more.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's hard to what I'm trying to understand is now that you've gotten, it sounds like over the last couple months you've gotten way closer to your mom.
Yeah, she had a really bad accident a few months ago, and we ended up moving her into our house for a few months, and I took care of her. And we're building a house right now, and she's moving in with us in a few months. So I think it's just, when roles reverse and your parents take care of you and then you take care of them, it's rewarding. It's special.
Yeah, my sister just had a kid.
I know.
And it's
you
the first.
told
I told
me.
you that. Yeah.
I know. I love that.
Yeah, and it's the first kid in our family. My parents' first grandkid, and
yes,
I think I don't have kids or anything like that. I when I saw a picture of that kid. It was
that kid
of my sister's kid, Kiara. No, it was just
so
because it was just such a foreign thing to me. I was like,
right.
My sister gave birth to another human being
wild.
Who's now in this world going to go through her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It definitely made me for a couple of days, I was just like, this is crazy.
Wait till you have your own.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, damn, when I have my own kids, I can't imagine what that feeling is like.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's.
I'm lucky to have a stepdaughter. And so I met my stepdaughter, Madison, when she was 7. And I was 25. My husband's a few years older than me. And it really kind of helped me, learn how to be, a stepmom at an early age. And it was interesting because, she was 7, I was 25, and just trying to work through that initial relationship was rewarding. And I will say now that I couldn't love her anymore and couldn't be any closer to her. And then when I had my son, he's 21, that was a whole different feeling too. And the fact that, they're close, they live across this, just down the street from one another. And then my mom's 5 minutes the other direction. I just feel really lucky
to have your family,
my people, my clan.
I was listening to a podcast a couple years ago, and the guy who was the guest was talking about he at the time lived in California. His parents lived in New York, and his parents were 65 or 65, and he basically one day came to the realization that if I see my parents once a year, on Christmas or twice a year on the holidays, if they live for only 15 more years, I'm only going to see them 30 more times.
Yes.
And I think looking at time that way, rather than 15 years, but, oh, how many times am I actually going to see somebody? How many birthdays do I have? It kind of changes your framing of time. And I think to your point, like the fact that you live right next to them is a big blessing. So he actually moved from California to New York because he was like, I need to see my parents. Because if I'm going to live in California, I see them twice a year. They live 15 more years. I'm going to see them 30 more times.
Right.
Which is kind of a crazy framing, honestly.
Yeah. I think too, European families just tend to gather more and spend more time together. I mean, my family with my brother's family, and now our children and their children. We spend all holidays together. We really try to cherish those moments. We're always together over the holidays. I see my mom, multiple times a week. I talk to her almost every day. So I saw something on a social media scroll or roll or the other day, and it was a two cell phones, and one said mom and one said dad, and it said underneath it like, I wish I still had those calls coming in or something like that.
I think I saw that too. Yeah.
And I was like, it's true. A lot of people are busy, and but you choose those relationships, And I feel very strongly that the more work you put into a relationship, the better it'll be.
How is your mental health now? How are you doing?
Good.
Good?
Yeah. I'm much better now that my mom's feeling better. Yeah. I feel really invigorated, recharged. I had a lot of thinking to do last year with just how I was going to start 2025 for the company. And we have some new operators joining us. We have a different set of organization that I've put into place and just kind of rearranged a few things, and it really feels good. And I'm definitely one for contests and, competitive edges between regionals. And, I've got all the web chats going. We're having expense competition. We're having a regional relay. And, I'm always in there poking the bear. So I actually feel really good about it.
I think what's really interesting is just your philosophy on leadership and kind of we have this for in tech is being in the details. It sounds like you're very in the details, at least
I'm in the details,
which I think is increasingly rare as leaders. How else would you characterize your leadership philosophy?
I walk the walk. For sure. That's really important to me. And I think that sometimes in order for someone to see their potential, they have to see or witness or walk alongside somebody doing it. For example, this was a year or so ago. I was visiting a property, and we had a lot of turnover, both on the regional side, the community manager side, and the service manager side. And I just decided that I was just going to go there and gather some people and put on my welly boots and a T-shirt, and we cleaned the property. We pressure washed, we scrubbed, we painted. Every morning we would all gather around in a big huddle, and we would talk about what we're going to do. And everybody, I was hand in hand with everybody. So there's no way in 2 months when I go back to the property and say, what happened? They're not going to be able to say to me, well, we don't really know what to do, or, because by the way, we did it. And we achieved success. And, 7 days later or 5 days later, however long I was there, when I left, I felt accomplished. I felt really good about what what happened. And the property looked great. And that could have taken months and months to achieve. So I guess I'm in the details a little bit.
What's next for you? Where do you see your career going?
That's a good question. I've only worked with 2 PMCs. This is my second one. So, I hope that our company continues to expand and we continue to add branches, and layers and have more directors of operations and, support and just be more nationally recognized.
That's exciting. We were talking yesterday about how rare it is too for somebody to be nowadays in a job or a company for that long. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And I think something that's really cool about GoldOller is, at least from my conversations with people, there seems to be this theme of like people staying there for a really long time. Why is that?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that, we have a very small round table. We have a small group of VPs that we all can fit around one table. And around that one table is over 100 years of tenure. And we all started with GoldOller in a different position than we're in now. And to some degree, we've grown up together. We've had a lot of success together. We've had a lot of misses together. And I think that our culture, by far, is the reason why people stay. Because there's a level of autonomy. We have a voice. Our ideas are shared. It's not this way or that way. It's, okay, if we did it this way last year, there's potentially maybe a better way to do it. And some of our best practices and our best policies came from a suggestion box. I feel very strongly and advocate for the voice of our team members. First question on their 30, 60, 90-day check-in is and will always be, do you enjoy going to work every day? Because if we have folks that are coming to work and they're not enjoying their job, then that's a problem. And I can tell you that I've interviewed probably more people in the last few years, and their reason for looking for another company is because they feel unappreciated. And making someone feel appreciated is so easy, and it's just small moments. And if all leaders, not necessarily even leaders, just if everyone just took a moment just to have a few moments with someone. I can remember, I think it was last year, I was visiting a property on the west coast of Florida, and I came in late, so I wasn't able to connect with the team. And there was a regional that was already at the hotel. And I said to her, let's pull 45 minutes aside in the morning before we go to the property just to catch up. Ask how her husband's doing, her family, her children, how life's been, how she's been. And after, she said, I really appreciate that you take just that 45 minutes just to, what did she say? To ask or be interested. And I think when you give somebody the sense of value or make somebody feel like they're valued and they're an important part of the puzzle, they're bought in. It doesn't matter if they make more money at the next place and, their boss walks by their office and never says hello. So I think, above everything, those moments, being in the moment is really important. And that's something that I really, really try to do, both, professionally and personally, being in the moment and having those moments, because a lot of people forget about it.
Jill, I want to thank you for being on this, on the podcast, and also being really vulnerable, right? Like, it's not easy. I know this is also your first podcast.
Yes.
And
you definitely hit me a few times.
but I really appreciate it. I seriously do. And I know every time we have episodes like this, I know that people are going to feel inspired and appreciate your authenticity.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.